Hello there, and yabba dabba doo, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I want to talk to you about one of the greatest bass players who's ever lived, Bootsy Collins.
Watch me! Watch me! I got it! Watch me! I got it! Hey!
Now, if you take a second and close your eyes and imagine a funk bass player in all of their extravagance and flamboyance and chops. For most of us, there's only one player that really comes to mind, and that is Bootsy Collins, the world's only rhinestone rock star monster of a doll. Now, Bootsy's extravagance as a player wasn't confined to just his persona, but also lived on in the numerous different basses that he used. Bootsy played a lot of different custom instruments, from his original space bass to his star-shaped bass that he used a lot in the 70s and 80s, all the way to the Warwick Signature Edition that was released in 2010. Today, we're going to be playing on a Mexican jazz bass. Early on in his career, Bootsy used P basses and jazz basses when he was playing with James Brown mostly. Didn't want to stand out too much, but wanted something that was nice and reliable. Bootsy's career really took off at an early age. In 1968, he formed a group called the Pacemakers with his brother Catfish in Cincinnati, where they were both from. 2 years later, in 1970, James Brown's band quit over a pay dispute, and he very suddenly hired the Pacemakers. Bootsy was 19 years old at the time. Now, Bootsy's tenure with the JB Band, and that is the original JB Band, back in James Brown, was very short-lived. It lasted about under a year. But in that year, they recorded on some of the biggest funk hits of James Brown's whole career. Songs like Get Up, Superbad, and Soul Power, which is the first song I want to talk about. Quick disclaimer about all the bass lines that we're going to be looking at today. I have distilled pretty much all of them to their essence. This isn't exactly what he's playing on the recording. A lot of these James Brown and even the Funkadelic recordings too are really, really long. They're grooving on the same thing forever, and he's doing a lot of really exciting fills that you should go check out and try to learn yourself. And this song is a really great example of the simplicity. I don't want to say simple in like a dumb way, simplicity in terms of not a lot of changes in the early era of funk and soul, some of those classic early records. For most of this song, it's basically just two chords. You have, over the one section, this D7. And he's mostly playing that, you know, depending on which recording you're listening to, for anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes before we get to the next section, which is just a G7. So it's just the 1 to the 4 chord. Now, one of the things that Bootsy has talked about a lot through his career is the power of the 1. This was something that he claims he learned in James Brown's band. Now, it's a very simple rule. You just play the root on the 1, on the first beat of the measure, and in his words, you can kind of do whatever you want in the space between. This song, Between the Two Sections, is a great example of the power of that, because when we get to what I'm going to call like the bridge, I guess, or the C section, right? He lays out the lowest note, and the whole band does, for that first eighth note. And so you get this really like exciting moment of where's the beat, and then it comes in a little bit later, and there's just so much drama to me in that. 2, 3, 4. And that tension between playing the 1 as much as you can and then sometimes maybe not is like part of the magic of Bootsy's whole career to me. Now, James Brown was notoriously hard to work with. So after Bootsy and Catfish parted ways with him, they linked up with a man named George Clinton. And this was the beginning of the Parliament-Funkadelic era. Now, for those of you that haven't heard of Parliament-Funkadelic, and I hope it's not many of you, go check them out. It is, in my opinion, one of the most important American bands of all time. We don't have enough time to get into kind of the history of it, but simply put, it was just two groups started by George Clinton, combined to be one collective. There was already a lot of cross-pollination going on between the two of the groups. Bootsy Collins found his way into it, and his life was changed. A lot of the persona, as we know it today, really started in this band early on when he joined. 1, 2, 3, So speaking of the one of the things that I really love about this bass line is how snaky it is in the beginning. The one is like really heavily implied, but we're not ever really hearing or feeling it. He does play on the one, but it's this weird hammer-on figure, and then we go back to the root an eighth note later. So it's again that like sense of tension and release of like, whoa, there's the one, but where is it? And whoa, okay, now the beat is still moving, I guess. But when we get to the main hook, the main chorus, that's where it really comes in this really strong, really cool way that I think is accented by what happened before. That we get this like busy kind of funk bass line stuff going, and then when we get to the main hook, it's just... And that's all you need. I mean, so much of Bootsy's career is built off of these 3, 4, depending on how you want to phrase it, 3 notes right here, which is, depending on whether it's a major or minor chord, either the Dorian mode or the Mixolydian mode. But that doesn't matter, because most of the stuff that Bootsy was playing, as far as fills, from James Brown through the P-Funk to his own stuff, was built off of these notes in octaves with maybe some fourths and fifths or something in there. So if you're trying to experiment with some fills of your own, you know, chances are it's in one of those shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4. The song is a little different from a lot of the other funkier kind of jams that we're showcasing. It does get funky, but it starts off as kind of like a crooner. And I love the simplicity of this figure. I mean, Bootsy just makes the root and the fifth like sing. It's insane. So up top, we have this really simple figure. 2, 3, 4. Right? It's 3 notes, but the way he displaces it through the octaves is so cool and so melodic. From that, we get like a classic pentatonic funk kind of riff. 2, 3, 4. And if you listen to the recording, he's filling in between all those measures in his beautiful way that he does. But from there, we move on to what is my favorite part of this whole song. And that is this bass line using what are called enclosures, which is just using chromatic notes like near the target note. So he walks up with this beautiful figure, goes a little something like this, played a little slower. 2, 3, 4. And each one of those, we've got the root, and then we go down a half step coming up, and then you lead a half step up to the minor third, and then you go up to the fifth, and then you do the same thing there. Half step below, up, half step above the root, and boom. It's like Baroque. It's like something out of the Romantic period, but Bootsy's throwing it in a funk song. Now, in addition to being a founding force in the face of funk, Bootsy was also one of the first bass players to use effects pedals as a part of his signature sound. Now, in Parliament-Funkadelic and his solo stuff as well, he was using a lot of distortion. He was using a lot of filter and wah kind of sounds, so the Big Muff by Electro Harmonics and the Mutron. He was using these sounds to match the bombast that the rest of the band and this new persona that he was adopting. And he was getting these crazy psychedelic sounds to really take the music in that direction as well. So for this next one, we're getting a little bit of help from our friends at Source Audio. They've lent us the Spectrum Intelligent Filter, which is a filter/fuzz pedal designed specifically for bassists. So it's kind of like a Bootsy box.
It's a funky vibe to play with. Warm me up, baby. So what the?
So that was Bootzilla. I wanted to feature that song for a number of reasons. One is it's one of the biggest hits that Bootsy had under his own name. It's part of the group called Bootsy's Rubber Band. Two is because the bass line is just freaking awesome. It really shows off a lot of Bootsy's technical prowess. It's, you listen to the second measure. That's like bebop. That's like some jazz stuff right there. Like it's insane the way that some of these lines are snaking around, doing some of that enclosure stuff that we were talking about before. So that was a very, very, very brief overview of some of my personal favorite bass lines by Bootsy Collins. This is one of the greatest bass players who's ever lived, who's written countless incredible bass lines. I highly encourage you to go check out his stuff. Everything from all the Parliament-Funkadelic records to Sex Machine, which is a really great live record by James Brown. Again, those were just some of my favorite bass lines. Please let me know some of yours in the comments below. This is Jake with Reverb, signing off. See you next time.